everyone, and welcome to our roundup of the year in music. And I'm delighted to be joined by Richard Bull, producer of BBC Radio Scotland's Roddy Hart Show. Hello, Richard.
Hi there, Ali. Thanks so much for inviting me on. This is an honour.
Absolute pleasure. And what we're going to do is we've picked 10 releases to talk about from this year. But before we do that, how was your 2020? You know, usually we bump into each other at lots of gigs, and we just haven't been able to do that. So how was it for you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's been a very strange year, but in terms of the programme, in terms of the Roddy Hart Show, I've been really lucky in that we've been able to keep doing it throughout. Because I mean, it's an independent production. I kind of put it all together at home, so you know, I've been working from home for years, so I've been basically pretty much the same routine. That we work from home, and then we go into the studio on a Tuesday night to broadcast to the nation. There are a few different sort of protocols, obviously, when we're in the building, but other than that, as I say, very lucky to have just kept going. And I know a lot of other people haven't been in that position. So yeah, we've just kept going. I mean, the kind of big difference is, in terms of it, I would say, is we've had more music than ever. We've been absolutely inundated. I'm sure you found the same with the shows and the blog and so forth that you do.
It's been quite incredible, because I started this year to do a new Music Monday playlist where I thought I'll have 20 tracks and see how it goes. And I thought, there's no way I'm going to keep this up through the whole year. And they're literally, and you know, you've got a choice. There's stuff you can leave out. You know, it's that incredible that people have continued to make music. And I think this year has shown the need for those that create to really keep on creating, but also for people to have another link to music. And I think radio has been a great help as well throughout the year. Yeah,
I mean, absolutely, like you say, absolutely full credit to the musicians who have just, you know, they've lost tours that haven't happened, and, you know, to kind of a lot of people to fill that kind of space of have just made more and more music, which is a positive thing. But like you say, for when you're trying to make a radio program, it's kind of, you know, it's hard because we are missing things out that we would like to play. We're not going back to things that we would have expected to go back to. It's just been constantly moving and more stuff.
I know Christmas, I think, has been a great example. The amount of Christmas singles that have come out. Maybe this has always been the case, and it's only because I'm now doing the Cam Glen radio show that I get so much sent to me. But there does seem to be a lot this year.
Totally. Yep. Yeah. Christmas songs, can't beat them.
Well, sometimes I think you can't beat them. Yeah, especially this year. So we're going to move on to our 10 choices of releases that we're going to talk about. So what's your first one that we're going to discuss?
Yeah, I mean, I should say these are just 10 favorites, 10 things that I wanted to highlight. It could quite easily be probably 10 others, or...
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
You know,
it's really difficult.
Yeah, and I have to confess, you know, I guess we both are. We are men of a certain age, and you know, there are probably vast swathes of music happening that I'm not even aware of. So I'm not making any claims that these are the 10 best records of the year, or necessarily even my top 10 favorites, but they're just 10 that I thought it would be nice to bring to the table tonight.
Well, I'm the same. I mean, there's a couple that I'm going to talk about because they lend themselves to talk about wider things as well. And yeah, basically it's just us having a chat about the stuff that we've liked during the year. So I hope no one takes any offense at it.
Sure. Yeah, good. And when you've invited me, I should say, I was thinking, oh, yeah, that's great. We'll play some music and we'll say a couple of words about it. And then obviously I realized that this isn't a platform where we can actually play the music. So I apologize to listeners that it is just the two of us talking, but maybe there'll be a playlist or something to accompany.
I think that's a great idea. We'll put together a playlist on the website that people can listen to. Yeah.
And then people can listen to that at the same time as they're listening to us talking, even if their device allows that. Maybe.
Yeah, good idea. This is on in real-time production being had.
Yeah. In fact, what I would recommend is people actually turn us down and just listen to the music. That's we shall carry on talking anyway.
We shall carry on because people expect it.
Good. So okay. First choice. I'm going to go back to January, and the album release. Most of these are albums. A couple of them I've picked some things other than albums, but it's an album release. Something in Us Never Dies by Laurie Cameron. It's an album of interpretations of the words of Robert Burns. Laurie Cameron is an artist from Perth, who I think is very much under-recognised in Scotland, which is partly her own fault, it has to be said. She previously made an album about 5 years ago called The Girl Who Cried for the Boy Who Cried Wolf.
Yeah, that's the one I know her from, yep.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great album. She's a great songwriter with a really kind of unusual poetic vocabulary, which, you know, kind of lends itself to the Burns material as well. So here she's turning to kind of lesser known works by Burns. It's got My Heart's in the Highlands, that one aside, most of the rest of them. And it's not even necessarily work. She kind of takes a line from here or there and kind of sculpts it into a song. So she's doing, you know, all the work. She's not just taking a poem and singing it. She's really kind of sculpting something out of bits and pieces. She'll take a line. For example, there's the line, God knows I'm no the thing that I should be, nor am I even the thing that I could be. She finds these lines. That one I think comes from a letter. And it's a line that could be in a Frightened Rabbit song or a Twilight Sad song. And she kind of sets it in this kind of beautiful musical setting with a kind of bed of piano and drums and guitar and a kind of wash of electronica, and creates something really beautiful. She has this kind of softly spoken voice with a distinctive accent, and the music kind of flutters around her, and I don't know, it just touches me. It's a real kind of emotional pull to what she does.
Now not that, but yeah, but that's an album which has passed me by, and I'm surprised at that because I do love my Burns. What was the name of it again? Because I'm noting this down for myself.
The album is called Something in Us Never Dies. It's by Laurie Cameron. As I said, she's kind of to blame for her own low profile, because each time she's released an album, when she released that one a few years ago and she released this one in January, immediately she's released her albums, she's gone to live abroad. So she's now on the west coast of America, and not, you know, playing any part in Scottish musical life. So yes, she's a kind of, you know, slightly obscure figure because of her not being in Scotland.
But well worth seeking out by the sounds of it, and I'm going to do that. My first choice is Avocet and Lend Your Garden. You see there? And it's a kind of enchanting kind of folk blues, even a bit of jazz in there. It's got, I always like to look for certain trends throughout a year, and the 2020 there's been quite a lot of harp going on, very beautiful harp, and Rachel Newton, for instance, her album To the Oz, gorgeous, but there's some lovely harp going on with Avocet. Iona Zajac is the player there. Lots of great double bass as well. It's got real kind of feel to it. It feels almost like a 60s or 70s British folk record. There's that kind of vibe to it, which I really enjoy. I was thinking it would be a good soundtrack to a kind of weird 70s kids TV show like Children of the Stones that we might have watched when we were growing up. But it's on Mink Records. I hadn't heard them before. In fact, I'm fairly sure that's their debut, and I just loved it. Absolutely loved it. Did you hear it at all?
Yeah, I've had a listen. I mean, I agree with you. It does it perfectly. Kind of captures that classic, natural kind of folk rock sound, but, you know, and even kind of veering, you know, just as Davy Graham did in the past, it kind of goes on journeys. It kind of goes into Africa, and, you know, it's a kind of quite adventurous thing. And but like you say, it is that the class act that really makes it unique, I think. Yeah. And Iona's voice is gorgeous as well. It's got the feel, I think, of musicians that know each other inside out and are really comfortable in this music, playing this music. Yeah, it's a gorgeous record, absolutely gorgeous. So what's your second choice? Okay, number 2, I'm going to go with, and I have it here. Excellent. You can see that? Yes. Citizen Bravo, Raymond MacDonald and Friends return to Yehoop, the world of Ivor Cutler, which is a star-studded cast on here. It's got, you know, so many names from Scottish independent music scene, from Emma Pollock and Alex Kapranos, Kareem Polwart, Rick Redbeard, and that's just the first 4 or 5 tracks. But no one can outshine Ivor Cutler himself. You know, there's some really interesting, experimental, adventurous music on here. You know, Raymond MacDonald is an avant-garde jazz musician, but it's all in sympathy with Ivor Cutler's kind of hilarious, bizarre, perverse words. It just transports you. It's kind of mostly from songs from Ivor Cutler's early releases, the late 50s, early 60s, stuff he did on Decca when he kind of invented this imaginary island of Yahoop. And you hear Ivor Cutler's voice drifts in a couple of times, and Phyllis King, Ivor Cutler's partner, is on there. Robert Wyatt, you hear his voice at one point, who was a friend of Ivor Cutler. But I mean, I think most significantly, it's just a great showcase. Apart, the words aside, but it's just a great showcase of Scottish independent musicians. And you see them all displaying their good humour and community mindedness. And there's a few kind of new voices on there, which is great to see people like Zoe Graham and Megan Airlie included in there. So it's just, I mean, the job that these guys did to pull all these people together is tremendous. And they launched it at the Celtic Connections right again back in January, which seems so long ago now, when we met up and went to concerts. But they played at the Royal Concert Hall, which I think was a bigger stage than they'd anticipated.
Yeah.
But they did a brilliant job of just kind of shrinking that big room down, so it felt like you were just in the living room, sharing a really pleasurable evening with friends. So yeah, full marks to Matt Brennan, Citizen Bravo, Malcolm Benzie, Raymond McDonald, and everybody involved. Great piece of work.
It's a great, and if you don't know the work of Ivor Cutler, it's a great introduction, maybe through musicians who you are familiar with. And I'd forgotten about Celtic Connections, I have to say. It's almost like a different time completely. But that show in particular, they really did, as you say, pull it off. It's fantastic the way they did it and the way they've collected. And a lot of the songs, should say, a lot of them are very short. Yep. That's the way that he did it. It was a short, sharp hit, if you like, and then move on to the next one. But
which makes it even more of an achievement that they put together. Yeah, like you say, 26 songs, each one with almost everyone with a different guest artist.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So you mentioned Zoe Graham there, which was by accident rather than design, but that's what I'm going to talk about next. And it's her EP, Gradual Move. I've been a fan of Zoe's for some time. Her previous work, I think you could say, kind of lent more to the acoustic thing, but this was a kind of real move forward in terms of not just the sound, but the songs as well. What I like about her music, it's never rushed. There's a kind of gentle rhythm to it, which sometimes masks very personal lyrics. But there's a kind of, not a slowness, that's the wrong word, but just a kind of gentle rhythm to the way that she sings and the way that the songs unfold. I think there's only 4 tracks on that. I will double check. Yes, there is. Gradual Move, Sleep Talking, Now by Now, and Fault Lines, but they're perfect. So I thought, if I'm going to pick an EP, then that's the one I want to pick. And I just think Zoe Graham goes from strength to strength.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember if I saw her once saying that she was a big fan of Katie Tunstall. Well, I might have imagined that, but that's who she kind of, in a way, reminds me of. She has all the kind of articulacy and confidence and maturity, despite being very young of Katie Tunstall when she first appeared on the scene. And like you say, she's done the kind of acoustic pop and a bit of indie with Hackett and Knackered, and then now she's doing a much more of a pop thing, and she's done collaborations as well, hasn't she, with Father's Son, and she's on, as you say, she's on the Ivor Cutler album. She's performed with Fat Suit as well. So it's a bit of chameleon. So I mean, it'd be interesting to see what path she goes down, and
I think she's a terrific songwriter as well. I think she always was. Hackett and Knackered that you mentioned is a brilliant EP, and great songs and great lyrics on it. I think she's very honest and in sharing with the reader kind of her thoughts, which isn't always the case, but it really works. And as I say, I think that's a real step forward for her. I can't wait to hear a full album. That will be really good.
Yeah, totally.
Okay. Next for you, number 3.
Okay, next for me. Working at the BBC on the Roddy Hart Show, obviously we have to be very aware of a conflict of interest. So we can't play music that we would stand to gain financially from it, which basically has, over the years, has meant we can't play Roddy Hart records.
I was going to say.
This year, for the first time, an album that I was involved in, we haven't been able to play because I basically created a record label to put it out on. But for the podcast here today, I'm no such conflict of interest, and no such rules apply. So we're just going to go for it. The album in question being
Jim McAteer's Here Be Dragons. And I'm so pleased that you're going to talk about this, because maybe you can explain a bit about it and your role in it.
Yeah, well, Jim is a friend. He's a absolutely lovely guy. He's been playing his songs around Glasgow and beyond for 20 something years. You know, he's often to be found at the open mics at Nice and Sleazy and Holt Bar back in the day.
Yeah.
Wherever there's somewhere to play songs, Jim will be there. And he just has a body of work of these kind of warm-hearted, witty, old-fashioned songs with a bit of depth to them as well. And we decided, it's not, some years ago, it has to be said, we decided there needs to be an album. So since then, we've been inching towards getting this album made. There are a couple of days at Green Door studio back a few years ago. And then more recently, Mike Fowler, who plays bass, double bass and electric bass on the album. He's part of a cooperative that has some studio space near the Barrows. So we've kind of landed ourselves on him, and he recorded more bits and has been mixing it. And as I say, we were inching ever so slowly forward. And then Jim took a fancy at the beginning of the year to the 29th of February, this mysterious leap day. And Jim said, that's the day I want my album to come out on the 29th of February. And having spent years building up to it, we suddenly had to kind of finish it at a sprint, which we did. Mike mixed away, myself and Jim, we were working hard to get everything done. Solveig, who did the artwork, and we pulled it off, and I'm so glad that we did, because we got that launch on the 29th of February. And I know you were there yourself, and a lot of people who were there kind of saying that was the kind of the last thing that they did in 2020, and we just got in before things shut down.
I wonder if Jim knew something, because as you say, that was the last gig I went to, and it was what a night it was as well. I mean, the idea of social distancing was, you could never have done it. It was absolutely rammed, standing room only. That was a great night. It's a great night, and it's a great album. And I think it's interesting that you've picked Jim after we've spoken about Ivor Cutler, because there is that kind of individual style and, as you say, sense of humor and a quirky way of looking at the world that Jim seems to have.
Yeah, totally. And and there's real good humor. I mean, it's quite deep. I mean, the sleeve, if you see the artwork, I mean, Jim has a birthmark on his face, and this island. I mean, it's a bit like Your Hoop, exactly as you say, like Ivor Cutler's island of Your Hoop. This is Jim's birthmark island, with Jim kind of smiling in the face of all these dragons lurking in the water. And there's a kind of metaphor there that it's good humor in the face of adversity. It's not a music to set the world on fire. It's kind of old-fashioned, but for those who've listened to it and got it, I think it's a wonderful album. And my involvement aside, it's one of my favorite albums of all.
It is. It's a stunning album, and I've played it. I've been allowed to, of course, play it on the radio, and it's one of the records I've had the most feedback from. And they all say, "What was that song?" and "the guy with the voice," or something along that line. Because Jim's voice absolutely is incredible, an instrument in itself, and once heard, I think never forgotten. And people do want to know more about it, so it is a great release.
Good. Well, thank you for saying that. And I should say, Here Be Dragons, my choice, available on the Sonic Bull label.
Yeah, exactly.
Sonic Bull Bandcamp page, or Jim McAteer Bandcamp page.
My third choice is Mount Doubt and Doubtlands. I think you call it a collection of songs by Mount Doubt. And if never there was a sure thing of an album that was going to feature, you've got it there, excellent.
I could have chosen it myself equally.
Yeah, but absolutely. It's a brilliant, it's a really classy collection of songs. What I like about Mount Doubt is they can all play brilliantly, but it's never in your face. It just kind of allows to go under. And then you've got this, talking of voices, you've got this incredible voice of Leo Bargery. And then when he harmonizes with Annie Booth, it's something very, very special indeed. Headland, which is on it, is perhaps my favorite song of the year. It's certainly among it, and I think it shows what they do just beautifully. It's such a strong collection of songs. Since it came out, I played it over and over again, and I knew I was going to like it. But sometimes that brings a sense of disappointment when something comes out, but not at all. It's out on Last Night from Glasgow. and it's Mount Doubt and Doubtlands, and just a quality collection of songs, I would suggest.
Yep, totally agree. I mean, it could easily have been one of my choices. I think Leo Bardry is a great songwriter, as you say, a great voice. The kind of darkness and the profundity of his words kind of echoed in that, the deep, soft, deep voice that he has. And he's a very clever lyricist as well. There's all kinds of wordplay in there. Kind of reminds me of Elvis Costello, Imperial Bedroom. Kind of, he's very interested in language and words, and it's about their third or fourth album, isn't it? They are building up a significant body of work.
Yep, and I think that comparison's an interesting one, because I do think his lyrics are it's one of those albums that you spend time with and you don't do something else while you're listening to it. You actually have to get the best out of it, sit and listen to what he's saying and listen to how it's being said. As you say, deep vocals and deep lyrics, and it works really well.
I feel like Matt Berninger as well, I guess, is someone else, or who he reminds me of a bit, just that very literate style in a kind of deep Nick Cave-ish kind of voice.
Yeah, that's, I mean, it's a really mature, it's probably, it's perhaps my favorite collection of songs of the year. Just every one you want to hear again almost immediately, which is always a good sign. Number 4 from you, Richard. What were we on?
Number 4 from me is, I have it. Well, I don't have it, but it's You're Doing Okay by Happy Spendy on the
I do have it somewhere next
Lost
to
Map Records.
Yeah,
it's actually an album which was a collection of 3 EPs. I've got a couple of the EPs there, or at least promo copies thereof, to give you a sense of Happy Spendy, if you can see those.
Yes, absolutely.
But despite it being 3 EPs and a couple of other odd tracks, it really works as a coherent piece of work. That doesn't detract from its albumness. It's very much a collection that works together. Happy Spendy is Emer Coyle from Derry, who's based in Glasgow. So on the album there are 14 songs, a lot of them very short. So at first listen, it's kind of a small, slight, wistful electropop album, sort of put together on, not meaning to be rude, but not very expensive sounding instruments. But when you listen, when you sort of go beyond that and you really start listening to her voice and her lyrics, there's just so much feeling in there, and grief. This is an album that has kind of grief written through it. It's actually quite, sad. She was thinking a lot about her father, I think, who she lost a couple of years ago, and this album, the songs on this album kind of come from that period when she was moving between Derry and Glasgow, and thinking a lot about her dad, and thinking a lot about romantic issues as well. And I think she said herself that she likes to write sad songs to help her with her feelings, and what she's come up with is songs which they're very reassuring and comforting to listen to. It's Emer telling herself that it's all right to cry. You're doing okay. That's the title of the record. You're doing okay. It's her, reassuring herself, and it's a very lovely and sweet collection of songs.
I think you're right. It is, and I think the kind of simplicity of it that you say actually gives the songs more power. It allows you're not distracted in any way. You're really kind of faced with the kind of raw emotion that's there. I think it's a tremendous album. It could easily have made the 10 that I would talk about, and it allows us to talk a little bit about Lost Map, because they've had a cracking year as well. They've released some brilliant music. Yeah,
absolutely. Not to be stopped by anything. I mean, the release is coming from the Isle of Egg.
Yeah.
The post map, I think they call them post map, the postcards. It's a great way of distributing their music.
It's a great way of distributing.
But send a postcard with a download link.
Yeah, and you get a lovely. I've got a few of them here, I think. Yeah, Fellsides and Good Dog, and they're all Pictish Trail himself, of course. It's a tremendous thing.
Yeah, absolutely. All good music, just all interesting, adventurous music, and looking beyond Scotland as well. Some of the artists that he puts out. Marks to Johnny Lost Map.
Next for me is Snow Goose, The Making of You, which came out fairly early in the year, I think. Yeah, you go, eh? And it's interesting looking at the album itself because it's really is a bit of a super group. I mean, if any album I was almost made that I was going to like, you've got Anna Sheard, who's kind of Snow Goose herself on vocals, along with Jim McCulloch, you know, who's played with so many bands, too many to mention. But you've also got Raymond McGinley, Dave McGowan, Steve Jones, Stuart Kidd, Chris Geddes, Ken McCluskey, the fantastic lap steeler Tim Davidson, and Davy Scott doing the string arrangement. I mean, it's a modern supergroup, you might say. It's a term which often gives people the shivers, but I would suggest it is. And on top of everything, you've got this incredible vocals from Anna Sheard, beautiful voice. It's just a fantastic collection of songs. And sometimes that's all you want from an album, just a constantly strong collection of songs. They made their debut album, Harmony Springs, I think, was a few years ago, and I really enjoyed that as a record. It was a real surprise. I didn't know anything about it when it came out, and this really follows up on the promise of that, and I think probably takes it to another level. It's called Snow Goose, The Making of You. It's on Glass Modern Records. I don't know if that's their own label or whatever, but yeah, it's a really nice collection of songs.
Yeah, I think it's a London label. Actually, I don't think it's them. But yeah, I know. I'm glad you chose this because it meant that I didn't have to, and I could choose other things. Because this could well have been one of my choices as well. Like you say, it's a who's who of the big boys of Scottish indie rock, but doing their folk rock thing with Anna. I've seen them a couple of times, and which is quite rare to see a Snow Goose in the flesh. But I'm followed them since those early Harmony Springs days. Jim is an absolute legend, I think. They're kind of a duo now. I mean, they kind of started off as more of a group, and they've kind of shrunk to a duo. And Jim McCulloch, I think he's an unsung kind of figure in Scottish rock music. But I first saw him in 1986. Not showing my age there, but I saw him playing with the Soup Dragons in Wolverhampton. So I've been a fan of his for a long time.
He's one of those almost Zelig characters in Scottish music that, lots of band lineups and Jim McCulloch will be there.
Yeah, I mean, he's such a kind of modest, a modest, guy who, would never push to the front. So he kind of, not necessarily as known as he might be.
Yeah.
So Snow Goose now, I mean, they live 400 miles apart. Anna lives down in Somerset and Jim's up here. So this album I know was recorded a couple of years ago as well. It finally came out this year, but it had kind of been waiting for a wee while. So, but they have promised us that while in 2020 they have been working on new stuff. So despite the distance between them, hopefully there will be more Snow Goose stuff. If 2020 has shown us anything, it's shown us that remote working is more than possible.
I really hope so, because it's interesting. It was made a couple of years ago. It feels like a record that actually could have been made any time over the last 20 or 30 years. It doesn't, it's not following any trends or patterns or anything. It's just absolutely the music that clearly they want to make. It's your fifth one now, I believe.
Okay, well, I'm going to go for, it's a single. It's called Hold, and it's by Jared Salos. Now Jared is somebody I've kind of worked a bit with too, right? Because I was one of the people behind the Stuart Cruikshank bursary in 2019, which was a sum of money that was a competitive process for a songwriter in Scotland to send in a song, and we went through a judging process and we awarded it. On the basis of the song New Orleans Esker, which Jared submitted, we awarded him the prize. It was very interesting submission, interesting kind of piano song, but with a kind of an ambition and a grandeur that made it stand out. It was different to anything else that we received. So the prize was that we tailored a package. We had a sum of money, but we didn't just hand over the money. We kind of tailored a package which best served Jared's development and maximize it was a modest budget. He's a young man. Comes from an interesting background with I think his dad comes from Holland. He grew up in Prague, born in England, grew up in Prague, and then he moved to Glasgow as a student. He's quiet, he's kind of intellectual, but he really has a very strong idea of what he wants to do with his music. But having come here as an undergraduate, he's not really connected to any music scene as such. So we kind of thought what we want to do is kind of try and connect him in there and give him a bit more profile. So what the prize ultimately involved was making some videos at University of West of Scotland down in Ayr, and a couple of days at Chem 19 studio with some excellent musicians. So we got Louis Abbott, Graham Smiley, Pete Harvey, and the master producer, Paul Savage. And they produced these 3 songs, of which Hold is one. There are 3 songs: Faded Leaves, Hold, and Kint Sakuroi. I can't really pronounce that one.
I know the one.
And it's just great. It's just, you know, I mean, to have played a small part in it is really rewarding. But you know, obviously it was Jared and the musicians and Paul Savage who did the work just to make these beautifully recorded songs, which are just full of space and an atmosphere. And it's just really interesting because I think they point at what's to come. I mean, Jared's is all potential, and if he gets the chance to do more, you know, he's really demonstrated with these songs what he can do.
He was involved in one of the Archipelago EPs from Olive Grove, wasn't he? And I will talk about them a bit later. But I think he's an incredible songwriter, fantastic songwriter. And so I've seen him live a few times now and just really assured. There you go, the Jared Salos, Volume 2, is it? Volume 1. Yeah. And he's I think he's a tremendous songwriter. Now, were these songs released individually as singles, or if people wanted to try and find them, where would they find them?
Yes, he's put out the 3. This is previous tracks. There were home recordings. I mean, he'd never actually been in a studio before. I missed that element of it out. He's made a few recordings, and he had an EP on Olive Grove Records, and then this second EP on Olive Grove Records. But they're all things that he's made himself, basically. Right. So the Chem 19 3 tracks he's put out over the course of this year. Every few months he's put another one out. So yes, they're available on Bandcamp and the usual streaming sites.
Excellent. Well, my 5th choice is Jenny Sturgeon and the Living Mountain. Beautiful kind of picture on the cover there. And Jenny came on the Scots Way podcast to chat about it. And it's based, or it's influenced by the Nan Shepherd book, which is also The Living Mountain. And if you don't know who Nan Shepherd is, if you pull a Scottish fiver out your pocket, she's probably on that. She's the woman with a headband that's on the Scottish fiver. But she's a fantastic writer from the 20th century. And The Living Mountain's her most famous, I mean, it's only a slight thing, but it's her most famous book. And it talks about the land around about the Grampian area, where she was from, kind of Aberdeenshire, and that area, which is where Jenny's from as well. And Jenny wanted to kind of do something similar with music and look at the natural world through her music, so that it almost, you weren't singing songs about it and such, you were almost explaining your relationship to it. It's another trend of 2020, if you like, probably not. It's probably been going on for years, but this idea that the natural world was being investigated in music. Erlen Cooper has been doing it brilliantly up in Orkney. I think Kirsty Law does it too, and it's often, you know, based around kind of folk music, but not always. You know, you've got kind of electronic representations as well. It's such a beautiful record. It's perhaps, this is a record that you can just relax into, you know, and it almost kind of washes over you. And yeah, it's almost the definition of ambient music, I would suggest.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I mean, it's beautiful. It mixes in, you know, recordings of the Cairngorms, into the mix. So it does create a beautiful natural sound. The playing and the singing, the production are all brilliant. Yeah, that's an interesting that there's a kind of trend, as you see it, or not trend, but there's a kind of, you know, a series of, I mean, it reminds me also of Kareem Polwart's Wind Resistance as well, just kind of digging deep into a specific, you know, the artist's relationship with a specific place or area or landscape.
I think that's it. It's not so much that this is anything new, because it's not, of course not. But I think with the idea of being able to record in different ways and actually, you know, get the trickling streams and the bird song and all that really clearly, and then mix it into your music. It's being done perhaps in a more interesting way than it has previously. At least to me, that's what I discovered through it. Definitely, it's out on Hudson Records, I should say, if anyone wants to discover it, and they should, because it's lovely.
Yeah.
Number 6 for you.
Number 6, I think I have it here. Oh yes. Well, Mount Doubt we spoke about earlier. Leo Bargery. Mount Doubt not only have Leo Bargery, but have 2 very distinctive voices, and you did mention her briefly, but Annie Booth as well, who has made a couple of solo releases over the last couple of years. And this year she released an EP with Chris McCrory as Slow Weather, which is also very good.
Yes, it is.
Really, I'm really taken with her. She has a real kind of human quality to her work. But I haven't picked Annie Booth. I've picked the band Cloth. This is one track from an album I've picked, and it's a version of Magic 8 by Annie Booth's song Magic 8, which is a song that she put out in last year, I think, on Spectral EP, and it's one of her very best songs.
It is.
And on this album, which is sorry, I'm getting reflection now. I should take the shrink wrap off these records. This is the Isolation Sessions, March and April 2020, on the Last Night from Glasgow record label.
Yep.
On which artists who record for Last Night for Glasgow have basically covered each other across 4 sides of vinyl. There's about 22 or so tracks on there. But Magic 8, Magic 8 I've gone for because, I thought it's a brilliant song.
It is.
And it's so great to be reminded of it by this cover version. Cloth, I liked Cloth's album. Was that 2019? It probably was, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
I liked it. I didn't absolutely love it, but I liked it. But them taking on Annie's Magic 8 and just making it into a sad, dreamy delicacy. It's just they've somehow created, the exquisite pop moment of the year. So the exquisite pop moment of the Magic 8 by Cloth.
That's interesting. I think I'd like to talk a little bit more about the Isolation Sessions, because it was an incredible undertaking. It was from early on in kind of lockdown. In fact, it says here it was conceived on the 17th of March. Last Night from Glasgow decided that they were going to do a project to raise money for venues and record stores affected through being closed. And as you say, it was their artists performing tracks from other artists that are on it. Some of my favourites is Lemon Drink doing Teen Canteen, you get L-Space doing Mount Doubt, in fact they do Headlands, and Nicola and Elliott doing L-Space, and so what you've got with all the 3 of those examples, and the Cloth example with Annie Booth, incredible songs, really incredible songs, and they're shown to be that way because they're done in such a different way. The song still stands out.
Yep. Yeah, I think the album is it's a great example because it's all done under lockdown, as is clear from the title. So it's just, a brilliant example of the work that musicians have done under lockdown. And it's also a fantastic example of a community of musicians working together with a social conscience, that they, that the money was there to benefit the venues which are in dire straits, obviously.
Absolutely. And it grew because then you had Brian Sweeney taking pictures. In fact, I've got a couple here. I'll show you. One of my brother's family up in Sweden. We even went up to Braemar to take these pictures, and one of me looking out the window. And the idea was that he would just go around and take these portraits of people either hanging out their window or outside their door, or who were locked down in different ways. And to see all those pictures together was incredible. It was a real community coming together. I mean, I think Last Night from Glasgow have kind of created that from the beginning, but this felt like a strengthening of that. And as you say, such a great cause to be doing it for as well. My 6th choice is Carla J. Easton and Weirdo. That kind of slightly sinister, again, 70s looking cover there. I'm a huge Carla J. Easton fan. I think this feels like an album that she's been working to since the very start. I was trying to think of a comparable career trajectory, and I was kind of coming up with George Michael doing the kind of pops. I know it's a strange one, doing pop stuff at the beginning, but then building each time to do something very different, but still rooted in this amazing pop sensibility that Carla definitely has. And like my favorite music, it takes twists and turns, and the kind of poppiness, if you like, it kind of almost hides something darker and often quite painful, it seems to me. There's joy there as well, but there's also kind of sadness too. And I think Carla does that really, really well.
Yeah, no, I think she is. She's a completely distinctive voice. And I mean that the album Weirdo, I mean it's full on, isn't it? It kind of pins you back in your seat, you know. Solar Eye pops up here, and Honeyblood pop up, you know. It doesn't stop to take breath, which I think is like Carla herself. She's a phenomenon who kind of never stops putting out new interesting material.
I think you're right. It's you know, we talked earlier about the Mount Doubt album being one you had to kind of listen to, and maybe Jenny's one you could let sit back and let it wash over you. This will not be ignored. You couldn't ignore it if you tried. You know, exactly. You just kind of put your headphones on or whatever, and suddenly it's like, I think maybe even the first lines are "Oh my God" or something like that. And you have to stick with it right to the end. And what a wonderful kind of ride it is. It just takes, I think if I was discovering this album in my teens, I would be having Carla J. Easton badges on my pencil case, or, you know, that kind of thing. I would totally fall for it in that kind of fan way. And in fact, who am I kidding? I am like that with it. It's just a great, great record.
And that's on the Olive Grove.
That's on Olive Grove Records as well. Yeah, they had quite the year, I have to say. Your seventh, I think we're up to.
Okay, we're up to 7. My 7th, I don't have a copy of it, but it's Fugitive Light and Themes of Consolation by Andrew Vazalek.
I've got it somewhere.
Have you got one?
I have got it. You talk about it and I'll go and show people.
Ali is much better than me at owning the copies. I have them all. I have files of them all on my computer, but physical copies I don't necessarily always have. Beautiful.
But this, I have to say, you said you were glad I picked Snow Goose because otherwise you would have done it. I would have picked this if you hadn't picked it, I have to say. I think it's amazing. I think Andrew's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, it's Andrew Vazalek, also known as Andrew Mitchell from Dundee, who's made many different, many very different incarnations of Andrew over the last decade and a half. He was in the Hazy Janes, melodic, jangly indie rock. He's been Andrew Vazalek, the singer-songwriter. He's made experimental music with Art of the Memory Palace. He's a member of Idlewild these days. He's collaborated with, you know, he's very loyal to the Marrow family, to Liz Lockhead, James Robertson. He's a good egg, but he's absolutely a polymath as well. A good egg and a polymath. That's what he is. And in recent years, he's made 3 albums. This is the 3rd of beautifully composed and arranged music, inventive, bewitching, instrumental music. And I think this might be him at his peak. This may be him. He's found his métier. He's, you know, really it's just head and shoulders, you know, above almost everything. Music, it's like the soundtrack for a film, isn't it? A film that doesn't exist. It's kind of nostalgic for that late 60s, early 70s, piano, woodwind, brass, string. There's harp in there as well, as we mentioned earlier. Yeah, it's like the soundtrack for the best film that you've never seen. You know, with like a Roy Budd or Ennio Morricone soundtrack with, you know, Stan Tracy playing the piano. It's just, you know, it's that good. It really is.
Yeah. He's such a special musician, and I think, you know, we were mentioning people having to create, and I get the feeling with Andrew, this is kind of, he has to get this stuff out there. He did the EP he did with Liz Lockhead was one of my favorite things of the year as well. It was just superb. It was her reading her poetry over his gorgeous music. I've seen him live a couple of times. I've seen him with full band, which is amazing. I've also seen him in a small cut down with maybe just 2 or 3. And however you see him, the music always is amazing. I mean, you know, almost kind of jaw-dropping music. The idea for it being a soundtrack to a film that you haven't seen, I think, is perfect. It could easily be like that. And again, often writes with his relationship with the land in mind, or with the sea in mind, or whatever he's got, you know, that to him as well. But yeah, I could go on and talk about Andrew for a long time too. But
and the Six Music presenter Gideon Coe made it his album of the year, like a week or so ago. And when I saw that, I thought, wow, that's amazing, that's brilliant. And then the more I thought about it, I thought, no, it's not amazing. It is
It's absolutely
right. It's
Yeah.
as it should be. It's completely merited. Just because he's living in Dundee doesn't mean he can't have made the album of the year, which I think he quite possibly has.
I think he possibly has as well. Yeah, I would say that. And if you haven't heard any of them, you've got such a great back catalogue, as you suggest, to go through and listen to too. So my next album is Pale Fire and Husbands. This was their first album, I think, for 5 years. I think that was right. And it's the sound that they had already, which was kind of Scottish indie pop music, but it's more lush. There's more production in this. I think Paul Savage is. I think he is involved.
Jamie Savage.
Jamie Savage. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Also, yeah, that's right. And they deliberately have him as all songs by Pale Fire and Jamie Savage together, because they said he's such a big part in the sound of this record. It's very smart. There's references to James Kelman and John Cassavetes, and they get their name from Nabokov. They suggested at the time it came out, because I had a quick chat with them for the radio, that the reason that they wanted this to be as good as it is because it might be the last one they do. Lives are changing and things are moving on. Since then, I've read elsewhere that they might be working on the next one already, which I really hope they do.
Yeah, totally. I think it's one we haven't actually done justice to on the Roddy Hart show, which probably should have played it more, because it is, like you say, it's big, it's powerful, it's kind of widescreen. There's a real Americana feel to it, but as you say, with a Scottish voice and a distinctive kind of Scottish literary sensibility, is it? If you like. Yeah, great. It's kind of Scottish literary Americana.
Yeah, exactly. Like kind of Wilco, that kind of feel. That's how I felt about it. But instead of being the open plains or things like that, it's kind of things that are happening in the west coast of Scotland, and that shouldn't be diminished because of that. In fact, it should be celebrated, I think. Who's it out on? Late Fragments is the record label.
Yeah. Which I think is their own release.
Their own release, yeah. Okay, number 8, please, Richard.
Number 8. Okay, this isn't an album or a single or an EP. It's a whole entire. What I've written down is Randolph Sleep entire lockdown output.
Yeah, I'm glad you've done that. Good.
I mean, yeah, well, I think I left the window open here. Hang on, I can talk you through their output. This is Adam Ross, who is basically the Duracell bunny of song. He just can't stop recording and releasing songs, and kind of lockdown has brought out this tendency in times 20. So which ones came out this year? I think You Can't Put Your Brakes on Love album came out earlier this year, followed by another album, Howling at the Sun. I think that's kind of re-recordings of older songs, followed by a single, which they recorded for my birthday. So that's a particular plus point. He recorded a single for my birthday. So many thanks to Adam for that. Then Live from My Imagination. That's a kind of imaginary, as you would imagine, an imaginary live album. And then on top of that, A.R. Pinewood No Life, which was an album released in the persona of a kind of robotic country singer.
That was a Lost Map release, wasn't it, I think?
Yes, it was. So yeah, I mean, all these releases, and they're all done with kind of flair and wit and vivacity. Adam is the kind of master of the couplet. He can really make you laugh with a couplet. The new single, what was it? I should apologize for how I acted. You poured your heart out, but I was distracted. I mean, you just, every other couplet is that good. Again, going back to kind of Ivor Cutler, who we mentioned earlier, or someone like that. I mean, I sometimes think when I'm listening to Randolph Sleep that I wish John Peel was still around, because I think, as much as anyone can claim that John Peel would have loved something, I think he would have loved Randolph Sleep. A lot of people think John Peel was all about, you know, extreme noise terror, but he was actually really into wordsmiths, and you know, from Ivor Cutler and Viv Stanshall to Marquis Smith and John Hegley and Nigel from Half Man Half Biscuit to all these people, Ball Boy and
yeah, that's
Darren Hayman.
And Ball Boy was the band that I thought latterly he really, and lyrically you can see similarities.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why. I mean, I think Adam is the kind of, you know, he comes in a kind of line that follows that. So I mean, it's a shame, you know, who knows, but you know, if John Peel was immortal, then maybe there'd be a place for Randolph Sleep on late night Radio 1. But you know, without him, we have them on Bandcamp. Many releases from 2020, all literary or sharp, you know, and he really cares. You know, there's environmental and political concerns in there. The Christmas songs that we mentioned earlier, he's the master of Christmas songs. So you know, lockdown obviously it's not been good for musicians, but it has in a way suited kind of certain prolific home recorders. I mean, there's also kind of Andrew Taylor from Dropkick and Mark Pilley, who's recorded three albums under the Ark Song name. You know, some people it's just kind of, in a way, not the way they would have chosen, but it's kind of worked for them that they've managed to put out a lot of work which wouldn't have otherwise existed.
Yeah, we were speaking to Beer Jacket earlier in the year, and he just released an album as well, which was all done. It was going to be full band and everything like that, and now he just had to switch it on his head and find a different way of doing it.
And best of all, I would say, what I didn't include in that list is the new album from 2021 release.
Yes.
Spirit Level, which is possibly the best yet.
Oh, excellent!
That's an album coming early in the new year from Randolph Sleep.
Oh, fantastic. No, I was really pleased that you mentioned them, because you said it was an incredible year for releases from Adam in particular. And then, you know, toss in a couple of Christmas ones at the end too, you know, and really, you know, poignant and funny, and this Christmas, please don't come near me, you know, that kind of sentiment. I think it just captures a lot of these things. My 8th choice it was released in March, I think, and we've mentioned Archipelago EPs already from Olive Grove Records. And this was volumes 5 and 6. So volume 5 is Circle Meets Dot, which is Joe Mango and A. Wesley Chung. And then on the other side, it's Henry and Fleetwood, Martin John Henry and Gillian Fleetwood. Oh, there you go. So I kind of wanted to talk about this because, one, it's a great collection of songs. It's a fantastic collection of songs. But also the Archipelago EPs were such a brilliant idea. And there was 6 volumes, 3 EPs. First 2 were released at the end of last year, and then this one came along. And you can, if you're watching the video, you can see how beautiful the covers are too, and they all work together. You can piece them all together to have full landscapes, if you wanted to do such a thing. The other ones are Jared Salos, who you mentioned. Oh, there's Richard doing it just that for us. Chrissy Barnacle, Volume 2, Pocket Knife, Volume 3, Moon Soup, Volume 4, and it's such a great idea. Olive Grove, I think, next year celebrates its 10th anniversary, and there's a 10-year anniversary album coming out for that, which I can't wait to get and play. Yeah, happy birthday to Olive Grove, of course, started by Helena Rifai as well as Lloyd Meredith, and it's been an incredible 10 years, perhaps. Well, it's certainly among my favorite record labels around. Yeah,
totally. These EPs, it was a great set of recordings, and this one, the one that you highlight, Circle Meets Dot, Henry and Fleetwood, there was a really good pairing.
Yeah.
With 2 kind of male-female duos, Martin John Henry and A. Wesley Chung, both kind of unconventional voices and writers, but with their kind of female other halves. Gillian Fleetwood and Joe Mango kind of really kind of adding a mellifluousness, if I'm not gender stereotyping, but you know, they both really work as duos.
Yeah, I think that what they did is they really paired the bands up well on them. You know, it really works throughout all of them. So for instance, if you weren't interested in buying all 3, you should, but if you weren't, you could say, yeah, but I like Pocket Knife and Moon Soup. I like that kind of odd poppy stuff, and that's the one I'm going to go for. Okay, now we're on to number 9. We're getting fairly near the end.
Good, yeah. Number 9, my 9th choice is an EP which was released quite late this year, just a few weeks ago. It's the EP is called Set Me Down, and it's by Emma Miller. Emma Miller is a singer-songwriter who lives in Elgin. I'd never heard the name before until, you know, a couple of emails arrived about this EP. So I was quite taken aback because she seemed to have arrived fully formed. I mean, these weren't kind of tentative first steps on the road to making music. These were kind of, you know, she seemed the finished article already. And it turns out, you know, that she'd moved from, I think she'd been down in London trying to break through, but, you know, I decided to move back to Scotland. So she does have a history, but just not one that we were aware of. And it's just a 5-track EP, really kind of nice old-fashioned production, but nothing extraneous. There's no trickery to it. It's all about the songs, her voice and piano, and her songwriting, which is just good, honest, emotional, heartfelt songs drawn from life's journey. Similar to maybe somebody like Blue Rose Code or Kim Edgar, you know, two other people who've made good albums this year. Just really great, good songwriting. I think she calls them her wee songs. She said that in a tweet recently, which I thought was very over modest.
And another reminder that there's great music being made in every single corner of Scotland. You know, when you get emails from all over. I mean, you've been getting this for a long time, I guess, but this year in particular, I started getting emails from and outside of Scotland as well, Scottish artists who are making music elsewhere.
Yep, totally. So yeah, in terms of Emma Miller, you know, London's loss is our gain. I hope we kind of hang on to her, and she sticks around and continues to make music as good as this debut EP.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great EP, and all the songs are tremendous as well. It's not just you've got a couple and then filler. Each one is well worth reading, well worth listening to. Okay, my number 9. I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to, because I've been trying for the last few nights. I've been listening to both these records and saying which one I was going to make my number 9. But they're both jazz albums, and that's why I wanted to talk about, because Scottish jazz at the moment, I just think is in such a good place. Nimbus Sextet, Dreams Fulfilled, is real ensemble playing by a band, and kind of along the lines of Fat Suit. You know, they play often long tracks, lots of solos in them. The musicianship's incredible, and it's really tight. It's really tightly done, and there is a lot of that in the Scottish jazz scene at the moment. But then you've also got Corto Alto, who again are incredible players. There's something looser about this. You get the feeling sometimes that it's just on the edge, maybe of not falling apart, but you know, it's got a kind of funk vibe, and there's a world music vibe, and there's kind of more perhaps going on in this that's not traditional. But they're both great records, both great jazz records. I've always loved my jazz music, and I'm just so pleased with what's going on in Scotland at the moment. You get singers like Cara Rose and Kitty, who's been recognised this year, who are incredible voices and clearly influenced by some of the older jazz singers. But you've got these amazing musicians as well, and it's so collaborative. You mentioned earlier that Zoe Graham has been on with Fat Suit, and so has Angus Monroe, another incredible voice. And I like it in Scottish music in general. There seems to be a real willingness to kind of shun genres or anything and just collaborate with whoever you want and cross over that way, which is really, really healthy, I think.
Yeah, I think people like us, maybe, or you know, certainly in radio, placing music into genres as we do, as listeners or broadcasters. I think musicians don't do that, do they? And I think some of the Scottish jazz musicians and the pop musicians that you mentioned, they don't hold any kind of truck with pigeonholes, which is a great thing. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of hearing more jazz now than I feel like I've heard for a while. It does seem to be a moment, doesn't it? I mean, even listening to Six Music, there's much more jazz on Six Music now, not just Giles Peterson, but across, you know, several of the other shows you're hearing quite a lot of.
I would say there's since the 80s. I kind of get into jazz in the kind of mid 80s, where there was a real moment with Winston and Branford Marsalis, and a lot of jazz funk stuff going on. I suppose acid jazz started. That seemed to happen in the 80s and early 90s. And then, yeah, now it's just everywhere and really amazing, really great jazz music.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I did my time as a pretentious teenager listening to Miles Davis and John Coltrane, and you know, I enjoy now going back to that and listening to those records again. And you surprised me with the second one, but certainly the Nimbus Quartet I've listened to and really enjoyed that album of really kind of funky but spiritual, beautifully played and arranged, you know, jazz music.
Well, Corto Alto released a lot of stuff that was you can get on their Bandcamp site only, and they didn't do too much, but it's all worth checking out. Quite a lot live at 435, I think, and yeah, great playing. It just sounds like everyone's just enjoying so much, just playing their instruments and playing together. And having seen Fat Suit live a couple of times, that's what you get from them as well. They're like, yes, they're pleased an audience is there, but actually they would just be having as good time if there was nobody there, because they just love what they do. And I think it is a shame sometimes that we, you know, you write a review and people say, well, what's this like? We say, well, it's a little bit like that. It's a little bit like that. But actually, in some ways, that does, you know, temper people's expectations of it. Whereas the musicians themselves often just go out and say, yeah, we'll just play it. If you like it, you like it. Great.
Good. Well, I look forward to joining you at down at the jazz club, or at the jazz gig, or wherever that may be when things restart. I think we should definitely make a date to catch some live jazz.
Definitely. So your 10th choice, please, Richard.
Okay, my 10th choice. I chose it for a couple of reasons. I'll come to what it is in just a moment, but I chose it for one. It's a slightly, you know, it's not an album, it's a single. I chose it one because of Jill O'Sullivan, also known as Jill Lorien, who has been responsible for a couple of the best releases of this year. The Three Queens in Mourning album, which was a tribute to, or the songs of Bonnie Prince Billy. That was a brilliant piece of work. She made the Not Your First EP.
That's a great
brilliant song. Yeah, Eyes on the Bird on this is certainly one of the songs of the year for sure. It's been a difficult year, but she's really played a blinder. She's involved in this record that I'm coming to in just a moment. I also chose it to give some attention and to highlight the work of music charities which have had a really hard year. Charities which work, in person, in workshops, musicians working with people from all kinds of different groups. Obviously, that methodology just hasn't been possible in 2020. So I know that charities have struggled and people have been furloughed, and the future has been uncertain. But ending the year on a positive note is the project Ensemble, and that's what we come at last. Sorry to delay, but we come at last to my choice, which is Nightlight, a single by Ensemble featuring Stephanie McChrystal, Jill O'Sullivan, and Jana Gabriel. And Ensemble is a project which pairs young people with professional songwriters, and these are young people who've come from very difficult circumstances. Some have experienced homelessness, and they've been through Wheatley Care's homeless service. Wheatley Care supports the Ensemble project. So workshops between young people and professional musicians, which create songs which provide a kind of an outlet for the participants to really work through their emotional journeys, but also creating songs that make an important statement and foreground issues that we should all be thinking about. And we have a prime example in this song, Nightlight, written by Stephanie McChrystal, who is a girl who was brought up, a girl who came from an abusive household. She left along with her brother. She ended up in Wheatley Care's homeless unit. Over the course of a series of workshops, working with Jill, Jana Gabriel, and her key worker, they wrote this incredible song, Nightlight, which is Steph giving comfort to her brother, telling him, if you feel lonely now, I promise it won't last forever. I think those are the words. all about Stephanie's spirit and her hope for the future. And the great thing about these records, these, songs that spring from these workshops, is that, the song itself and the process of songwriting is also a constituent part of Stephanie's, recovery and her, facing the world. It's just a tremendous, thing for people to have and to work through. And for the listener, we're used to story songs that tell stories, but for these songs to come from a place and come from a person, where they're absolutely true, told by the person who's experienced them. Stephanie sings on this song, which doesn't always happen, but she, somebody apparently by all accounts, she started off very shy, and then she took to the process and ended up writing melodies and joining in the recording process. So it's just a massive emotional impact to hear songs like this, and this is just a great example. And it's a single, as I say, released by Ensemble, featuring all these people. It's called Nightlight, and we get a whole album of songs coming out in 2021, an album called No Place Like It. So that was my last choice, which I thought was a valuable one, just to really highlight some brilliant work that's going on.
You've just reminded me of the Distant Voices project, which was Vox Luminous. And that Distant Voices is a project that explores crime, punishment, and reintegration through songwriting and other forms of creative expression. We pair some of Scotland's best songwriters with people who've experienced the criminal justice system from lots of different angles. I won't read the whole thing out, but if you go and look for Distant Voices and Vox Luminous, then you can find out loads more about it. And it's a similar type of thing, and shows you the work that's still being done in the community at such a difficult time.
Yeah, I mean, Vox Luminous, absolutely brilliant work. I mean, there's a song by Emma Pollock. It's a couple of years old, called "I Won't Follow Him to the Grave," which was working with a young man in prison, and he was singing about his older brother. And it's that, I mean, that to me as well, like this song Nightlight, that just to me is just such a kind of an emotional song, just made so much more emotional by the fact that it's absolutely from the mouth of the person who experienced it.
Yeah, well, it's all things to check out. My 10th one is an album by The Sons, which is The Creatures We Were Before We Are Ghosts. Now, The Sons were one of the first bands that I kind of discovered through doing Scots Wi Hae back in 2009 or whatever it was. And they sent me their music, and it was a bit of an epiphany, because I went, wow, this is amazing, and I don't know anything about it. And then it was the beginning of, because the website kind of started out mainly being about books. That was the idea about it. And then suddenly people were saying, oh, we've got an album out. And then I got to know Lloyd a bit through Olive Grove and through Pinko and the other bloggers that were out at that time that were doing things. And The Sons became just a favourite band of mine. So to hear that they had a new album out this year was just, it just made my year, really. Because I feel like if it wasn't maybe for this band, I'm sure I would have got round to listening to lots of the new Scottish music, but they kind of pushed me in the right direction. Again, a bit like the Mount Doubt album and the Snow Goose album, it's just a collection of great songs from beginning to end. There is a kind of quirkiness to the lyrics as well. Often, they're often they remind me a little bit of American Music Club and that kind of Mark Eitzel vibe. There's a kind of melancholy to everything that's going on, but you've got songs like There Are No Sharks and It's Time for Bed Now. I'm glad you kept your hair, John Travolta, which is a great title for any song, and a lots more than that. It's probably the album I've played most this year, I think, the Sons album. If I'm just saying what will I put on, and I'm not entirely sure, I'll put The Sons, The Creatures We Were Before We Are Ghosts. They're a band that I will always kind of go back to, and I go back to those earlier albums too, because they're just, for me, they're exactly my kind of music. They're the bands I've been listening to who weren't Scottish but made similar kind of music, and then I find out that there's been a band here all along that were doing that as well.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm slightly embarrassed to say we never played this one on the radio. Apologies to the Sons. I did listen to it. I did listen to it a few times, and it's not because I didn't like it. But the reasons for not playing it are probably the same reasons that
I love
it's
it.
good, because it's quite uncompromising and weird and, like you say, downbeat, and it's not immediate. You know, you have to kind of work a bit, which doesn't necessarily lend itself to you know, a first hearing on the radio.
I agree totally. And if you've listened to it over and over, you hear new things and get new things from it every time. But it does take a bit of work. I think that's true. A bit like with some writers, you know, some of the books, you take a while to get into it and really get to the bones of it. And I think that's what you do with the Sons. But actually, the rewards are greater out the other side when you do fall for it. And that's why I play it again and again and again, not so that I know it off by heart and sing the melodies and pop lyrics or whatever, but to get more from it, I think. Like, yeah, exactly. Like watching a favorite film that might not be easy. It's not like Jaws where you kind of know it all by heart, but one like, say, Raging Bull, where you love it, but it's not an easy watch, and it's not an easy, there's something deeper going on, I think, with it.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. And it's an album which I must return to myself.
Well, that's our 10 each, Richard, and I think we've done pretty well. We were going to have a quick any other business just to see if there was anything that happened during the year that you particularly wanted to talk about that we haven't touched on yet.
As we've said, it's been a strange year, and I've kind of been in a tunnel of listening to, you know, I think often in a year I will discover more things out with what I'm in. You know, I'll be at a festival in the summer and I'll catch a band I wasn't expecting to catch, or at a concert I'll see a support band I wasn't expecting to see, and which will take me in a different direction, because I listen to music. Usually I would say I listen to music and have favorites beyond the repertoire of the Roddy Hart Show, which is a certain kind of set, you know, type of music. It's very various, but it has to be kind of melodic and you know, not alienating. It's a certain kind of feel. You know, I know something's a Roddy Hart record, and I've probably been living in that tunnel much more so this year, just because, as we've said, I've been inundated with music, so I've had that producer's hat on when I've been listening to music more than I think I usually do when I'll be listening to more things from further afield and from different genres. But I've kind of haven't had those serendipitous moments where I've kind of caught something that's totally different, which has blown my mind. So yeah, I've been in a bit of a tunnel, I would say. I mean, the other thing I suppose that we should mention is the whole kind of online gigs that have obviously been to a small degree taking the place of live music.
Yeah, people have been finding different ways to kind of keep playing. And at the beginning of lockdown, there was a real splurge, is a horrible word, I don't mean that, but everyone was trying to find a way to do this really well. And I think maybe it's unfair to name names, but some people certainly did it better than others. And now people are doing paid gigs online as well, because that was the other thing. How do people still kind of make money? I know that the Bathers were going to do quite a big play of I think it was Kelvin Grove Baby, and they had to put that when the new system of tiers came in, and they couldn't be in the same hall to make it, which I was looking forward to that. But yeah, it's been really encouraging to see how people have still continued to find, I mean, I'm sure it's a huge struggle. In fact, I know it's a huge struggle, but they've found a way to kind of get their music out there.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you say, paying gigs. I watched Warren McIntyre and Starry Skies launch it. He launched his album just a few nights ago.
Yep.
And it was, like you say, it was a paid gig. They had a small crew, so there were a few cameras. The sound was coming through. They did it at Maybank Studios in the Gorbals kind of way, which is where he recorded the album. And it's possible with a bit of care and a bit of expense and a bit of time to produce something which is really excellent. And I think, you know, now that people have gone down this route of online concerts, I think once we are back back at gigs and at venues, you know, it's not going to go away. I think it's going to be something that stays a part of the musician's life, of the promotional and touring world, is that, you know, people will be invited to gigs remotely.
Well, the one thing I would like to mention that we haven't mentioned that I kind of got into more this year was Scottish hip hop. I mean, I've always kind of listened to Stanley Odd and Loki and Hector Berserk and Young Fathers and the ones that maybe are more prominent. But this year, I really started getting to other people as well, folks such as Ward Jenkins, Steg G, who I knew a bit, but kind of got more of that, Freestyle Master, Empress, who released a great album. And if you want to look further, I would suggest there was an album called No Justice, No Peace by Scottish hip hop artists for equality, which you can get on their Bandcamp site. And it's a great introduction. There's a guy called Big Taj who does this amazing kind of almost 70s, almost disco funk stuff. A Becca Starr, Cryptic. I would love to have played more of them on the radio show, but there's a hell of a lot of swearing going on. So often that's just not possible. But yeah, I've really started to get into it. And one of the things is that they're singing about recognizable, you know, they're not trying to be anyone other than who they are. So a lyric that my brother likes to quote is, I went for my Farahs down the barras. You know, these kind of rhymes that you would, you just wouldn't make any sense to anyone else. It's a really thriving scene all over the country as well. A Vacant Real Estate is a great a guy up in Aberdeen who makes some amazing music, whose stuff I just absolutely love. So that was my real discovery of the year, was kind of falling in love again with hip hop and Scottish hip hop in particular.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I don't know the younger names. I don't know, but Steg G and the Freestyle Master, I think they're legends. Stanley Odd, Solar Eye, and you know, and Loki, you know, really important voices. So yeah, totally.
Well,
other than that, you know, all the albums that we haven't mentioned, I'd like to, you know, apologize. I love some of these albums just as much as the ones I mentioned, but we couldn't fit it all in.
We couldn't, and I was going to talk about some of the reissues like All Hash and Cock, which was the very best of the Bachelor Pad. The Bathers, who I did mention, reissued the Marina trilogy. Last Night from Glasgow put out the Bluebells album, Sisters, which is a fantastic record. It was great to hear that again. And the Muldoons and Close Lobsters and lots of kind of bands who came back. But I think we'll have to leave that conversation for another day.
Yeah.
So, Richard,
Ali, if you could pick one, and the waves of 2021 come crashing in and wash your records away, which is the one that you would save that we've spoken about today?
From this year.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I think it might be the Andrew Vasilik one. I didn't even pick it. It was your one. Is that what you were going to pick?
I think that is, I think that is probably the best album. Yeah, Jim McAteer is probably my favorite, but I think so. I'd say Jim McAteer's album, but let's say if we were going to give the Say Award here and now, I know there's a few months of releases still to be included, but I would give that one to Andrew Vasilik.
Yeah, I think so too. It's an amazing record, but they were all amazing records. And as you said, if we were to do this tomorrow night, we could easily have picked 10 completely different ones and talked for an equal amount of time about them, I think.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for giving me the opportunity to join you tonight.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, Richard. This, I think, might be one of our last podcasts of the year. So we'll be back in the new year with someone completely different. Cheers.